Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi, Nikki. Hi, everybody. Yay. My name is Risa Shoup. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am a co-executive director of Art New York. I'm here to do a little bit of an introduction before I, too, get to sit and participate in this awesome panel discussion. I'm going to give us a land acknowledgement and then remind us of a few things, and that's the end of my agenda. So here we go. We would like to take this time to acknowledge that wherever we are currently located on Turtle Island, otherwise known as North America, we are on occupied territory. Art New York's membership in the 5 boroughs of New York City operates on the unceded ancestral land of the Lenape, Wappinger, Canarsie, Rockaway, and Matinecock communities. We want to honor and celebrate all of these indigenous communities, their elders past and present, as well as future generations. We also want to take this time to acknowledge that after there was stolen land, there were stolen people. We want to honor the generations of displaced and enslaved people that built and continue to build the country that we occupy today. And for our friends watching on the live stream, since we are gathered today in virtual space, let's also take a moment to consider the legacies of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect indigenous peoples worldwide. We invite you to join us in acknowledging all this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time, and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, anti-racism, and allyship. The virtual part of that land acknowledgement was written by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario, Canada. And to learn more about whose land you're on, please visit native-land.ca. Thank you all for being here. I hope to see you frequently throughout the day and also at our celebratory happy hour this evening. It's been a great couple of days in the forum. And as ever, I am just so proud and grateful for the Art New York staff, the board, and for all of you for making this such a fulfilling experience. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce the wonderful Ash Hicks, who's going to moderate our panel. And that's the end of me. Let's enjoy.
Yay. Thank you so much, Risa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Disability Equity in the Room, a panel discussion. My name is Ashley J. Hicks, AKA Ash, she, her. I am the manager of member experience and access at Art New York. Outside of this role, I'm also an actor, a disability equity advocate, a writer, a teaching artist, and there are probably a whole other bunch of titles that I didn't write down. For a visual description, I am a Black woman with albinism, a condition that causes a lack of pigment in the hair, skin, and eyes. Today, I am wearing black ankle boots, black pants, a white shirt with a heart and the word love in the middle, under a black blazer, and my hair is big, blonde, and curly. I'd like to start off by asking each of our panelists to introduce yourselves with your name, your title and/or titles, and a visual description for our audience here and on the live stream.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Marilee Talkington, and she, they. What am I wearing today? I got my black leather boots on. I've got black pants on. I have this incredibly lovely long sweater, cashmere sweater, all the way down to my feet, but it splits in the middle. I've got short red curly hair and thick black glasses. From time to time, you may notice that I'm going to put on orange sunglasses because the fluorescent lights are real, and that's one of my access needs. And do I need to describe
Your titles.
what are my
My
titles?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm a professional actor. I write, I direct, produce as well, disability advocate, activist, consultant for about 20 years, the founder of Access Acting Academy, the first acting studio that prioritizes blind and low vision students, and the founder of Think Access that is launching in January, which will be sort of the masterclass of accessibility education.
Thank you.
Hey, hi, my name is Azure, and my pronouns are he and they. I'm taking an ASL class, so I'm practicing. Let's see, so I'm wearing my Dusty Ren Fair shoes. They are black faux period boots, some black pants, a little like cheeky sweater tank top, and then like a tie-dye amorphous top, right? My mask, as ever, cute mask, and funky glasses, right? I'm a black person, fat, black, trans person, non-binary, hottie, as I like to say, and I'm wearing a couple of chunky rings and an Apple Watch. So yeah, I teach at the New School. Hopefully my students are watching right now because this is their allotted class time, and Your discussion post is up on Canvas right now. Please participate. Okay, so I'm teaching global dramatic literature this semester. I also teach a trans narratives and theater course that I'll be teaching in the spring, and sort of anything else. My background is in experimental theater. I'm an actor, mostly playwright, director sometimes. If there's money, I'll probably do it.
Yeah.
So, get your budgets ready. And also a disability advocate, and I guess a dancer?
Yep.
Sometimes, yeah, I hang out with a lot of. Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I hang out with a lot of dance people, and they recruit me. Wow, there's like a mannequin in a window staring at us across the street. That's
we keep
weird.
it interesting.
Wearing
here
a
at
blue
520.
shirt, so there's like the man is watching. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you, and I
here.
will pass it this way.
Hi everyone, my name is Vinnie Stars. I use the pronouns they and she. I am an autistic, ADHD, seeing impaired, hard of hearing creator, recovering actor trying to make it on Broadway for 30 years. I'm a healer and a consultant. It is my true honor to be back in the city today for the first time in 3 years. Whew. And what an amazing environment to be in. So thank you for this warm energy and the change and the roots that we are inhabiting here. So I do consult in the industry, and I also coach parents of autistic kids to get to know their kids better and understand the misconceptions within the system. Visual description, I am a light-skinned, white, femme-presenting person. I am non-binary. I have on camel-colored booties, navy blue leggings, a camel-colored belt, a gray V-neck top. I have shoulder-length blonde hair with this lovely turquoise mask given by Azure, bright pink earrings, and gold-rimmed glasses. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you all. I am so excited for this conversation. Before I jump into the first question, I just want to provide a little bit of context for our audience here and those of you viewing on the live stream. So earlier this year, I presented a workshop that I developed called Accessibility in the Rehearsal and Casting Room. And out of that conversation, or because of that conversation, I was fortunate enough to interview several disabled artists in the New York area about their experiences with these processes of casting and rehearsal rooms. And so along with my own experience as a disabled artist, and the many conversations that I've had with other disabled artists, the workshop was born. And so this panel discussion is what I'm hoping to be a deeper conversation about disability equity in our field. So with that, I'll dive into the first question. Each of you brings a unique perspective to this panel as disabled artists. Can you share how your disability has shaped or influenced your journey as an artist? And we can popcorn it, whoever wants to answer first.
I'll go. I'm actually going to reverse the question a second. How has my artistry shaped my disability? I did not know I was disabled until a theater person in 2020 suggested I was. And this has been a journey that has been inseparable from the art. When I was in my first show, it was like, stand here, do this, do that. Your butt is gonna be in the same place every night at 8 o'clock. This was a world I could understand. And so I based a lot of my life on doing that thing because that was the thing I could process. And so how has my disability shaped my artistry? I guess I would speak about this from a journey perspective, and that is that I lost and lose access to the art and to being connected with the way that I am and understand the world, and being isolated. And that is what the industry did to me as I was pursuing this without this broader knowledge and spaces like these. So I think that's where I'll leave it for now. That is probably a complex story there, but for now, that's where I'll leave it, is they're just inseparable. I just never knew I was an autistic artist. I just didn't know. And they're so inseparable for me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you, either of you want me to repeat the question?
Sure. Okay. How has it influenced my art? I would agree with Vinnie as well. They influence each other. It's not, the arrow doesn't go one way, but I will say that, starting in the 90s, I'm a Gen Xer, and so starting in the 90s, not seeing anybody who was blind, low vision, or disabled, we've heard this story, so on and so forth. I had to create my own spaces and really trust my own aesthetic and develop my own aesthetic. And so I even though I was taking acting classes and I actually got into grad school, I was creating my own work the whole time. And creating my own work that was very sensory oriented. It was not show their audience here. I was doing a lot of site-specific stuff in the late 90s and the early 2000s, doing a lot of sound stuff. Oh, I should say I'm blind, low vision. So interacting, just my engagement with the work is not fully visual. So just creating very sensory oriented works, and then also rooting myself in how do I meet the work? How do I need to be, how do I best show up within a structure that is inherently quite rigid and quite patriarchal, actually. So I think it's influenced my art in terms of me actually taking up more space and really learning what I need and not just depending on other people telling me what I need to do what I need. So that's the short answer.
Thank you.
So the question is, how is what is the question?
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, yes. Each of you brings a unique perspective to this panel as disabled artists. Can you share how your disability has shaped or influenced your journey as an artist, or vice versa?
Sure. Okay. So, sort of pre-pandemic, I had this ongoing question as we started to see more support for disabled artists, particularly in the theater industry. I feel like it's also felt familiar to me because it was much like the support starting to appear for trans and non-binary artists, right? So I feel like we have these little waves happening of access, resources becoming available, but I was asking myself, like, am I disabled? I don't know, you know? And it sort of felt like, well, what do I think? Do I think I'm disabled? But I will say that that was pre a couple of diagnoses. And then, you know, eventually I got like the diagnoses stacked up enough that I was like, okay, yes. So when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I was like, okay, all right, so this is a thing. I think that there can be a freedom in accepting that one is disabled because there are some resources available that otherwise people would not avail themselves of, right? Or I'll speak for myself saying I've given myself permission to say what I need. I will say I also just turned 40, so I feel like there's a certain level of like, just like not caring what people think. that has like coalesced, right? So, but also as a Black person with X, Y, and Z, you know, identities, like my respectability politics have not saved me, right? And so I'm just like, I'm gonna just say what I'm gonna say, right? Like that's kind of, like I'm gonna ask for what I need. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, right? And so, this is my bee puppet. This is, if you were like, what is happening? This is a little like finger puppet, that's a bee. I also wanna acknowledge that the radiators are making that like knocking sound. And it's a little distracting for me. And if anybody's like, what's that sound? It's the radiators, right?
Thank you.
Yes, doing the thing. So I feel like we're all in a crisis, right? We're all in a crisis right now. Yeah? I'm in a crisis. Are y'all in a crisis? Yes, hello people. We're all in crisis together here. And I've really been asking myself, you know, as I get rejections, the rejections are still coming this week, right? Like rejection emails, like, it's not just, oh, people don't want my plays, people don't want me. It's like, do I want you? Do I want this theater, right? Do I want this industry? And so I'm really just like, I know what I bring to the table. There's a whole lot of brilliant fineness, right, and talent, like just, you know, I contain multitudes, much like my carpet bag that's under my chair. But do I want to be a part of the theater that exists now, right? If space can't be made for me, right? So for example, I'm by invitation only. I don't audition, right? And I don't work for free either. So like, come to me with an offer and I'll let you know. Like we'll talk, right? And I think there's real audacity, right? You need to have audacity, but I think that it becomes easier when you're like, no, these are my needs, right? Like as a disabled person, like, if you can't roll with the fact that I have a dynamic disability, which means that my like ability to move around and do certain actions is going to be different from one day to the next, then there's not space for me.
Can I just piggyback off of
Please.
something?
Please.
You know, we talk about resources, and at a certain point, I can't make submission videos that no one's going to watch. There are practical elements to this about how disabling is that process for somebody here doing that work. That's one example. But, you know, looking at sort of the disabling elements of the environment, and that's something before I really understood what disability is, I had this misconception that it's like hello, how I grew up and how I'm processing, but like it's in this box and you either have it or you don't. And I had so much misconception that I cast myself out of my own show. I cast myself out of that box because of my own misconceptions about how this plays about. And so, yeah, I think it's, and I wrote this as something to say a little bit later, but you know, it's about examining our relationship with humanity and this being an aspect of humanity, not as something that we are just always so separate from it. And that was just a misconception I made. But on what Azure was saying too. It's just that at a certain point, I kind of can't be all things to I just can't. There's like, that's a decision. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I said, I'm, kind of thinking about doing this theater-related thing, and he just stopped and he said, why would you? Why would you go back into these spaces where you haven't been welcome, you can't be supported? He said, I wouldn't even know how to accommodate you. And so that's where the conversation ends for a lot of people, is the privilege to even start a career.
Thank you so much for that, Vinnie. I want to pull out something that all three of you said with this first question. When it comes to disability, disability is a normal part of the human experience. At any point, anyone can become disabled. Disabled, it's not a bad word. And just to plug some resources for our people in the audience and on the live stream, we do have a 4-part module series about disability, Disability 101. And it's a 4-part module series, 15, 20 minutes, where you get to wherever you're in your journey about disability equity. It's a great place to start or continue to share. And that's on our the Art New York YouTube page. So jumping back in here, let's talk about representation, which I know is like a deep well of multiple things, but representation of disabled individuals in media, theater, and literature has historically been lacking or misrepresented. How do you feel? And I totally recognize, I want to honor the fact of what just happened in the past 2 weeks with the recent election and the potential impacts that have yet to occur in our field. But how do you feel the current landscape of representation is changing or not? What do you think needs to happen to see more authentic, complex, disabled stories?
Are we talking about theater, TV, film, voiceover, just media in general?
Let's start with theater.
Okay. Oh my gosh. You have to realize this could be its own month-long symposium, right? We talk about this all the time. There's no like, well, first you're gonna do this, then you're gonna do this, then you're gonna do this. I'm gonna throw out like 5 things and they can all start at once. 1, make your theaters accessible. If people can't even get into the theaters, then what's the fucking point? I mean, you gotta make your theaters accessible, friends.
Including the performers, right?
Including the performers.
Including the performers. Can
Yes.
they get on the stage?
That's right. You have to make your theaters accessible so that people can actually rehearse somewhere, they can actually get into spaces. Make your audition spaces accessible. Make the whole audition process accessible. We could talk about who's writing, who's actually providing the content. So that's its own thing. But in terms of just auditioning for things, if you have the power to actually hold auditions, do you know how to make them accessible? Have you actually done that work? Are you going to do that work? Because it's important work to do. When you don't make auditions accessible, 1, either people can't even get into the room, or when they're in the room, they don't feel safe enough to actually bring their great work. They're holding a lot of your tension. They're wondering if their needs are going to be met, and when their needs are not met, they can't actually bring the greatness that's inside of them out into the space so that you're like, oh, what an amazing actor. More often than not, when people go into auditions, their access needs are not being met. There's so much stress that's involved with not having access needs met, not only on the part of the actor, but also on the part of those that are auditing. Because now we're holding the space for you all that have made these mistakes, and we have to make you feel better. I'm saying you as though, probably not you, but who knows, you, me. So make sure that auditions are accessible. Make sure that spaces are accessible, rehearsal spaces are accessible, everything is accessible. And then, of course, we can get to the writers, which I won't go into because I'm sure that the other panelists want to talk and add their 10, 20, 40 $million cents to that. But this could be a whole thing, so I'll just I'll stop right there.
Yeah, this is Azure. So that's an access thing, by the way. Hey,
you.
identify yourself when you're speaking, particularly in virtual settings, but also in person, right? Not everybody can see you or identify you.
Thank
Okay, this is Azure speaking. Access is not like a one-off thing, right? Like any commitment to social justice, it is an ongoing thing, right? And there's no single answer, right? Because disability looks all sorts of ways and doesn't look all sorts of ways, right? You may be able to see it, you may not be able to see it, right? And sometimes our needs are conflicting. But what I found in many disability justice spaces is that we really do our best, right? To state what our needs are and then find ways to compromise, right? So for example, most people in this room are now wearing masks because I asked them to. And that's great because I'm immunocompromised and probably so are you if you've had COVID. So, and our ASL interpreters are not wearing masks. Why? Because that makes it, because they need to not wear masks in order to be able to communicate, right? And if somebody were not able to wear a mask for whatever reason, they're also covered, right? The thing is like the access, the special access is not just for disabled people. Oops, see, I touched my microphone. Sound guy, keep me in line. Thank you, give me a thumbs up. It's not just for us, it's for you too, right? Like, guess what? You also get that juicy, like, coverage of not having to breathe in as many viral things, right? You too get to not have to take stairs, right? Especially if you perhaps are disabled and haven't realized it yet or don't want to claim it because, you know, that's a difficult thing in giving up privilege, et cetera, right? Like, guess what? Everybody likes a single stall bathroom. The trans person, right? Like, it's kind of like we all just want privacy in the bathroom, unless you're a kinkster, that's a different story, right? But like, it's not just for me, it's for you too. So like, let's all get these juicy resources, right?
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I look at this a little bit holistically. You know, there are entire, from an accessibility standpoint, there are entire departments, teams of attorneys, a lot of resources going to fight against accessibility or mistakes made in accessibility. And this is Vinnie speaking. Thank you, Azure, for the reminder. But this is actually like a really good example. I think sometimes we get in this industry, in these mindsets of like, especially in 2024, and with DEI programs being in place, it's like, we have to do it right. We have to do it right. We can't ever make a mistake. And that is a poison to disability inclusion. And there can be, I think of it a little bit as like, you know, when you have like an improv scene with just two people and you start and it's just two people, it's like a blank slate.
Yes, and?
And this is, yes, and. Exactly, but this is a call to be with one another in a way that much of the industry and the pace of the industry will not let us be. And so to me, I see this as a resistance piece, as a challenge to ourselves to open up. And if you don't, you know, I'll give one example, which is I was tutoring an autistic girl, and her school wanted, she can't read graphic novels because the font is different, the layout is different, all of these things. And growing up, I wouldn't have had to do that, but I couldn't do it either. So I spoke with her intervention specialist, and I said, this girl can't read this. She actually cannot read this. And so the intervention specialist took this to a team of teachers and started explaining the differences of how this was being processed. And she was like, they were like, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, wait, I processed that a little bit like that too. So there was an opportunity for discovery. And so that's kind of the space that I think can be helpful, is not like we just have to be right about this all the time. We're gonna make mistakes, and when is somebody passing you a seed, like Azure just did? When is somebody passing you, oh, I get it, okay, that's helpful. And then I wanted to go back to representation lacking or misrepresented, which really are two different things.
Yeah.
But just looking at kind of what I've seen, the realm that I deal in has the word autism in it. And if you aren't aware, autism is a billions-dollar word. There is an entire industry behind that word. And so what I see, and I've seen with other disabilities, and frankly with other identities, race, et cetera, is like, we're gonna put this show together, and we really value your identities. We really value what you're gonna bring.
We value that money.
No, exactly. And then that's kind of how we bring people in. We bring marginalized people in to the conversation. In a space they may or may not be supported, because day one and day two, we start cycling. Well, which parts of those identities can we use? Which can we make money from? And so, and what you've seen with autism is that all of a sudden when people are like, well, I'm autistic, it's like, well, that's a problem. And so it starts to be that just being conscious and being a bit of a resistance against that, understanding, you know, when that kind of thing is happening. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that now.
Thank you. I just want to pull out a couple of things here that, again, Marilee and I have talked about, like this could be a whole, this could be the whole convening, just talking about the very first question that I had, and the amount of work that I, as an artist, was doing because I was so afraid to self-disclose. That was the word that I was looking for.
Disclose.
Sorry, there was a word that I was looking for prior to the panel starting. Self-disclosing my disability in spaces that were not created for someone like me. The amount of capacity and pre-work that I was doing prior to going into auditioning or rehearsal rooms, making sure that I passed as a non-disabled person, because I didn't want to be labeled as difficult or my needs wouldn't get met. And I, typing up a script with my lines to make sure that I could see it, because that wasn't provided for me, or I wasn't asked about it. Pulling out something that Vinnie said earlier when it comes to just how, I don't want to say performative, because I do believe a lot of work is being done and things are being changed in terms of how disability is viewed on stage and in life. But I have noticed there tends to be this thing where it's like, we're gonna put up this show and it's about disabled people or the other identities, and it's like, we've checked that box. We don't have to do this again until next year, or till the next thing pops up to where it's like, ooh, this is the hot trend, this is the hot topic that's happening right now. So thank you all so much for that.
Ash, I just wanted to say one quick thing. I mean, give me a little space and grace to put a line between industry and art. I'm an artist, and what that does to the connection, to the lineage, to the work, to what's flowing through our DNA and our bodies, I mean, we're just gonna cut it off right there. And what I would say about disability is, this was a mistake that I didn't understand, is like, this is life experience and perspective. And so it can become a demand in the process, and that's the risk that we run in the current systems. Well, we have this budget, everything is fixed, uh-oh, now we have to add accessibility, uh-oh, and it starts to become this like big demand. And I do wonder, and I invite people to discover, we are in a cultural kind of shutdown. And I wonder about the power of that. What if there is a way to reverse that demand? If there is a way and the need to tap into these literal Renaissance skills and connections, and to use that as the powerful force that it is.
This is Ashley. Thank you. Continuing on. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Yes.
Sorry. So, hello, this is Azure, and I'm a Virgo. So here we go.
Yes.
One of the identities that I possess is that I'm an arts administrator, former grant maker, development person, probably was on your panel.
Yep.
For whatever award you applied for, I probably was on the panel. So, so to Vinnie's point, right, about like, oh no, an expense having to do with these difficult people, right? Big D, difficult people, yeah. My suggestion for you administrators is that, first of all, I always say when I'm on a panel, if you are talking about an issue and you're like, oh no, the budget, okay, you have exactly 1 fiscal year to make a change, right? Like if it's the new fiscal year, you could have made a change in your budget. So that lets me know where your priorities are, right? Because the budget is a moral document, right? So put your money where your mouth is, literally. Well, not, maybe not, I don't know. Depends on what your money's made of in your currency. But the other suggestion that I would make, right, is that you need to leave some space in your budget, right? So like maybe, you know that like, that little piece of the budget that you're like, oh no, if one of our lights explodes or something, whatever, you know, like we're just gonna leave like a little space, a little fat in the budget just in case, right? So if you're interested in increasing access, working with any population, I would say, actually, that is experiencing oppression, marginalization, whatever, leave yourself some room, right? So if your actors need cabs home because they are being targeted for violence, you can send them a cab, right? So you can just say, okay, heard, let me do it, right? Go forth and do it. The fiscal year it's moving, right?
Yes.
So sorry, before you jump into the next question, I wanted to give an example of what access actually does look like. So I worked with this company called Breaking the Binary, which a few people know about. It was their first season, and we were going into a rehearsal period. And I said, "Hey, I'm legally blind. Do you have an access coordinator?" They didn't, but I actually created an access needs checklist that they could send to all their actors. And I filled out my own needs. And what ended up happening, this was so fascinating. We get into rehearsal. I was the only one of all these actors in all these different readings. It was a staged reading series that had said they had a disability. We get into the room. 12 out of the 13 people had access needs. 12 out of the 13. But they had not known to ask for anything. And what ended up happening is we all agreed that we were going to use different lighting. We were actually going to start at different times. We were going to end at different times. We were going to start in different ways. And it served everyone in the room. And all of a sudden, because this access needs checklist was sent out, and people started talking about what's the way in which we want to create the rehearsal space, we worked so well together. And the work that came out of it was so dynamic because everybody felt supported. But it's so interesting how often we categorize, well, we've got that one disabled person, but there's so many people that aren't actually even identifying as that, but have access needs. So in terms of something super practical is have an access needs checklist. It doesn't even have to be called a checklist. An access needs form that you can send out to your actors, to your crew, not just the actors, to the crew, and just stage management, to the directors. What do you need? Knowing that there may be some competing some conflicting access needs, but that's a practical that could help in the room too.
This is Ashley. Thank you so much for this is such a full conversation and everything I was hoping it would be. So yay. Pulling out a couple of things when it comes to accessibility in a budget. As Azure said earlier, what you budget for, that's what you care about. You know, that shows what you care about. And often what I have found in the situations where disability equity and a commitment to combating ableism is that it's sometimes a reactive thing, not a proactive thing, because it's not planned for. And so because it's not planned for or thought about as deeply or as carefully or intentionally, that's how harm happens. That's how more mistakes get made. And it's not to say that mistakes won't be made anyway, even if you do budget for and plan for and do everything that you would for the rest of your budget lines. But when it's thought about reactively, then it's like scrambling to fix it, only to not have learned anything to repeat the same pattern of behavior the next time. Okay, so again, I've had these conversations with Marilee. Fun fact, Marilee and I went to the same grad school, different years, but same grad school, ACT. And we've talked a lot about the unpaid labor that disabled artists tend to find themselves in. Hi, Christine. We've talked about, you know, when you've been hired for something, whether it be as an artist, as a playwright, or as an actor, and you may be the only disabled person, or at least the only one who is self-disclosed, and you're suddenly put in that position where you are now the point person for all things accessibility on that project or on that thing, but you're not being paid for it. What kind of advice would you give to those theater organizations that are just starting out, that don't have like a full budget to hire a coordinator, or, you know, just so that it's balanced, and if you're there to be hired as an actor or as a playwright, that's what you're doing, and you're not doing like a dual role. What suggestions would you make?
This is Azure. Look, that is a different job. That is a different line item. That is a different hat. That is a different contract, et cetera, right? Just because I contain multitudes does not mean you get access to all of that because I'm in the space, right? Like, like today when I showed up, oh, what do you want to do? Nope, just here as I'm showing up wearing my actor hat in this particular moment. So tell me where to stand, and I will stand there. Tell me, you know, like, we're gonna put the microphone on. We're doing that, right? Also because I, you know, work with trans folks, I'm like, that is a different line item. It is not your job to fix America in the theater. It is not your job to tell them how to like support trans people, right? And so what I suggest for, I'm speaking to the individuals right now, is that you either ask them, can you pay me for this service, right? This is a different service and you need to pay me, or you need to find a person. Now, if you would like to suggest a person for them to hire, that is very helpful, but also not your job, right? I'm also a union rep at my job. So I'm very, so it's important to understand what the scope of the job is. And don't be giving out the freebies, right? Tell them what you need, and that's their job, right? And theaters, institutions, just go get the money. Like, I'm really tired of the, like, we don't have it. Okay, go ask someone. Like, Indiegogo, like, write a grant, like, find it, right? Like, find it. Because we're not talking about astronomical sums of money, right? We're talking about probably less than $1,000. So actually, it's very disrespectful, right? Desgraciado sin vergüenza, right? Like, go find me some money. Stop talking about how poor you are. You could have raised some money while you were talking about how poor you were. I'm over it.
Thank you.
I did speak with somebody who works in administration, and he said to me once, he said, and I don't know if this is true, I'm kind of relaying the words, he said, it's much less about the money and it's more about the values. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it was something that he said from an administrative standpoint.
But it is though, because this is Azure again. But it is because you know what? If you value coffee, you're going to make sure there's coffee in the office, right? Like we have a value of making sure that there's toilet paper in the bathrooms and that people wash their hands. Hopefully, sometimes you have to tell them, please put the soap in the bathroom, right? That's ridiculous, by the way. Like, please check your soap dispensers and your hand sanitizer dispensers, right? But like, I did not choose to live under capitalism, but somehow, somewhere, people decided that we were doing capitalism, right? And in capitalism, it's like not hard. The way that people do all these mental like gymnastics, right? The way that we value labor, items, anything else under capitalism is through money. Yes, thank you. Like this is just like money, right? It's very simple. So whatever you value, you're going to find a way. Now barter is also totally legit.
Yep.
And you can offer me things, but to offer me nothing is disrespectful.
Marilee, would you like to speak on this, or are you ruminating?
It's yes. Yes to what Azure said, yes to what Vinnie said. I'm sort of feeling the weight right now of decades.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've passed the B.
Of decades of being asked to solve other people's problems, and then having to source everything, and then where does the energy that I was going to put into my art go? Because it's constantly divided in a room that doesn't have access, that doesn't have needs being met. It's taken me a long time to get to where I am in terms of my career. I'm 52, and I've been going at it for 30 years, and I look at my non-disabled counterparts and the amount of work that disabled folks have to do just to even get in the room. All I'm saying is I'm feeling the weight right now. So all the solutions that Vinnie and Azure said, yes, put it in the budget.
Yes.
Put it in the budget, put it in the budget.
And honestly, kind of letting a consultant or an individual know up front, looking at the project, just kind of like an initial assessment might be really helpful. And having somebody say, this protocol or this resource might be helpful. And having somebody kind of do that up front can be helpful cost-wise, and it'll be a different set of experience coming at it if that's not your lived experience. The other thing I would say is that many of us are fighting this with our families, in the world, on the train, as so many of us are fighting a lot now. And so to then come in and have to defend who you are or your life experience and defend its validity in the process can be traumatic. So that's another piece of labor if we're going to break it down there. And it's same with lots of identities that kind of get called in and then don't get to be truly supported. And I will just add, there are wonderful things to be gained from valuing that up front. Starting with the value that's coming from a disabled person, honoring that and honoring this collective process, as opposed to what we're talking about where it starts to get reactive because we're further down the lane. And so I would front load what you could in terms of a practical suggestion.
Always. Prophylactic.
I mean, okay, we're laughing. This is Azure.
Yes.
But I was actually thinking, I was like, don't say it,
No.
right? But like, talking about planning, I was like, well, those planned pregnancies, sometimes they go a little bit better than those surprise babies, right? And so, and I think in the same way, like, we want to plan for things, right? And I also deeply feel like that crisis that I'm talking about, the little bubbling, you know, that's always with us, right? Yeah, the question of when do I get to be an artist, right? Like, I understand that I'm an amazing advocate, educator, right? Like, activist, all of those things. But I got into that because I wanted to make art, right? So, like, where's the artists need to make art? I don't want to just be the person that's doing this work, this really heavy work constantly, you know? Yeah, so that's just what I think. Yes, so pass the beat. Would
Thank
you like
you.
some beat time?
Can I offer just one more
Yeah, of
thing?
course, of
I want to throw another win out, which was, so last year I was in a show, I was on Broadway in a show called Camelot at Lincoln Center. And because I know what I need and I'm comfortable asking. I didn't used to be comfortable asking. I didn't even know what I used to need, but I do know those things now. Before I even started the rehearsal process, the stage manager knew about my visual disability, reached out and said, do you need anything? And I said, yes, here's and I always have a sheet. Here are my access needs. I sent them, and then I said, it's dynamic though. So one of the major things is that we're gonna stay in conversation.
Yes.
And throughout the entire process. So this isn't just, then this may change depending on what the direction is. And throughout the process, we just stayed in dialogue. We just stayed in dialogue. They wouldn't be going, do you need anything? Are you okay? It wasn't like that. But it was checking in, are your needs being met? How are you feeling? And we ended up having a really incredible relationship to the point where I got to have a voice in tech. And this is Lincoln Center, and their huge stage with all these lights. There's all these millions of dollars being thrown around. Good capital. Well, no, they're nonprofit. Wait, no. Okay, forget it. Scratch that.
As a nonprofit.
Yes, I get right. Okay.
Nonprofit.
But there were moments where I got to tour the entire space ahead of time by myself, so I could orient things like that, which were very easy to ask for during tech. There were certain lights that came up, and I'm like, I have to wear sunglasses on stage, and they're like, fine. They didn't actually go fine. They went, great, whatever. So all that to say is that there was a constant dialogue. It's not, we got you, access needs are done. And so I got to end up doing really spectacular work because of that. I felt so just taken care of and got to do great work. And it felt, I got to concentrate on the work. And it was just easy then. But there was a line in the budget.
Yes, this is Azure. I'll also say, now that I've had my yelling about your budgets, et cetera, that there's also what I'm going to call an economy of discomfort, right? An economy of discomfort.
This is
So,
a great phrase, great.
if you're somebody who experiences oppression on the daily, multiply marginalized, whatever you want to call it, right? You're probably constantly uncomfortable, right? In some way, shape, or form when you're in public, and hopefully not at home, right? But like, that's the space, hopefully, where you can just let everything, you know, get in your gremlin zone, right? But like, when I leave my house, I am constantly uncomfortable. So my proposal is that we all share in that discomfort, right? The idea is that you can take some of our discomfort and hold that, right? Now, that doesn't just have to do with disability, that has to do with all identities, right? And the thing that like makes me so angry is that people are proving themselves very unwilling to experience even the smallest amount of discomfort, right? Because they don't even realize, like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I have to put a mask on. Oh, my freedoms. Okay, all right, cool, right? cool, right? And so I have committed to myself to be less uncomfortable, because why do I have to be uncomfortable all the time? all the time, right? And so, yeah, as a fat person, I was a Lortel voter, Lucille Lortel Award voter for 3 seasons. By the time I got into like the 2.5 season, no, find me a different chair. I'm not about to sit here and be uncomfortable the whole time, because also my assessment of your show is gonna get stanker and stanker the more uncomfortable I am. So if you want me to judge the show fairly, then you need to find me a chair that isn't hurting my hips, right? Or that isn't doing X, Y, and Z, right? And I know that a lot, there's so much shame, you know? And so like a lot of my like fat compatriots, oh no, it's fine. I'm like, okay, all right. You know, like I'll go ask. I like, it doesn't have to be, right? Like, or can I move to the back of the theater, right? If you're, if there's, because that's usually where the chairs without arms are, right? That kind of, so these conversations, let's share the discomfort, and that doesn't actually cost anything, right? That doesn't cost anything.
Really excellent topic. I call it honor the distress. And I work in the field of very distressed people where the reactions might seem extreme to others who can balance their neurobiological systems, right? And so, yeah, a part of this, I think, and this is like just for life coming up, is we're gonna see, and we see every day on the street, significant distress. And the power of an artist can be to just pause and let it be what it is, distress, and to know that by doing that, we are creating a structure for a layer that is under that distress to come to the surface. In stress cycles, and where we have in systems of, you know, urgency, perfectionism, isolation, it's that this just starts to come down like such a hard no. And this is a challenge that we're gonna need for each other to, you know, I see your distress, and that's just what it is. No matter what, it's gonna look like, you know, everything under the rainbow, especially right now. So if it can be helpful just to say that's distress, to identify it and honor that in the process.
Yeah, this is Azure again. I mean, I'm just thinking about like, you know that game show where they're like, what's in your bag right now? Let me see what's in your bag, right? But I think that like, yeah, we can all just look in our bags right now. Like if say one of you started falling out because your blood sugar dipped, right? Oh no, this person, they're falling out, their blood sugar is low. What are we gonna do? Well, there are some people who are like, call the ambulance, call the cops. This isn't, you know, we can't deal with that. Okay, well, open your bags. Somebody's got something, right? And so I think that this is what we can do for one another, right? In spaces. And so like, yes, in art spaces as well, right? All right, like if you're a scrappy indie theater and you don't have a line item budget for snacks, which you should, blood sugar and metabolic disabilities are, they're overlooked. They're overlooked. And it's like, come on, your uncle, your mammy, you are diabetic. Let's stop playing with these bagels. You know? And that's another thing where like, I'm gonna just say it, right? Like if you want me to come to an all day thing and pay attention, we do not have the good blood sugars in my family. So I'm gonna need some protein, some caffeine, and some water. You cannot just feed me simple sugars and expect me to pay attention, right? And these are things that we know, but we just forget them conveniently, right? And so if we can all hold that, you know, which means if you have to pee, please speak up, right? Don't let it just be me like, excuse me, we all have like bodies, can we have a bathroom break, right? Did y'all know that if you're uncomfortable right now, you could stand up? Move around, right? You could say something, right? You can go out the room and come back and like, right? I think, and those are little acts of resistance that we're gonna need, right? Of like breaking out and going against the norm that we're gonna need in these coming years.
This is Ashley. Oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted to happen. Because many of the answers that you all have shared like covered a lot of my questions where I was like, well, don't need to ask that because it was shared. But I do want to briefly talk about how much of mainstream art and performance, often off Broadway, is designed for able-bodied audience members.
So they say.
So yes.
But who are the subscribers?
Yes.
Who are they? Anybody? Okay.
These are people with walking canes?
Yeah. Anybody else? Wheelchairs, right? Wheelchair users, people using walking canes. Who else? Like, who are the subscribers?
You might want to call out.
We don't know?
Seniors.
Senior citizens, okay. Like there's this, oh, can I say it? Should I say it? Yes, we know who it is. When I go to a show, I look. Who's here? Who's here, right? And so often we're relying on these white senior citizens, maybe they live in New Jersey, right, who have access to some money, right? Now, if we use what else we know, the Venn diagram, whatever you want to, are those people able-bodied?
No. Nope.
Are they? Okay, so what are we even doing here?
I love it. This is Ashley again. So with that being said, that being the framework, how do each of you approach creating work that is for disabled people? Whether that be something that you have written or directed, or how do you approach storytelling and or performing from that lens?
I'll start. I'm just at the beginning of this journey, so I don't have a great answer to that. That being said, bravely unmasking, bravely just being yourself, just walking the path as people before you have done and people by our side are doing. But I don't have more of an answer than that yet. That's a great question.
I feel like when I first started, when I was first making work in the early 2000s, I was really thinking about the work itself and making it more visceral. This is a tough one because there's a part of me that's like, yes, I want to make people art for. What I want to do is make art accessible. That's what I want to do. I want to make art, period, whether it's for a particular group of people. I don't know if I want to do that. I want to make art where the groups, the identities that I know, that I'm in community with, that are marginalized, and I'm not in community with, that are marginalized and oppressed, feel that they are being seen, heard, welcomed, and felt in spaces. But in terms of the actual art, I'm not trying to push back on this. I'm really just trying to really think about, because the work that I do, I did a solo show 20 years ago that was about my disability. It was 20 characters, and it was I played from fully sighted to totally blind and everything in between, and that was a show about disability. But I don't want to say it was actually for disabled people. And I really think about this, like the work that actually has disabled, that's about disability, is it for disabled people? Some of it is, some of it's not. Some of it is actually to teach non-disabled people. That's not the work that I'm really excited about right now, is being the teacher on the stage. I'd rather just explode different kinds of aesthetics. But in terms of disability aesthetic, I'm very interested in really innovating new ways for not only audience members to access the work in all different ways, but for performers and crew to actually create sets, to create dressing rooms, to create rehearsal spaces, to create work that that really speaks to, and not only, it's not about accommodating, it's actually using the disability to create art that's actually more expansive.
Yes.
So, and that, I'm seeing that more and more. Ryan Haddad, I think, is a great example of that. He's a solo performer. And I'm seeing it here and there. I'm seeing it here and there, but when you actually dive into the intersectionality of people's identities and use it to actually elevate the work, it becomes so exciting, so rich. The landscape becomes so big. And that's art that's for us, by us. It's by us, for us, and it uplifts everybody, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is Azure. So I just went through a whole creation process with Circle O, which is founded by my friend and colleague Kayla Hamilton, who's a dancer, right? So I've been in a lot of dance space. Well, as I say in my class, what's up, Khalil? Nice to see you. It's one of my students. Yes, the separations between dance, theater, right? Like all of these performances, like they're artificial, right? It's all coming from the same thing, right? Which is religious ritual. So is dance theater? Is theater dance? Yeah, kind of, you know. So I don't identify necessarily as a dancer. I identify as a theater maker, but like, yes, I'm in the dance space. And we're making this space, this piece with lots of disabled people, right? And different disabilities, which involves a lot of discussion, right? One thing I'll say I do is that I had a little folding stool that I would bring with me. So when we were, just a little, I almost put it in my bag, but then I was like, I don't feel like it. Yes, but a little stool so I could sit down when I needed to, right? So, and at one point, Kayla was trying to work something out. She's like, walk back for it, walk back for it. No, do it again. Wait, I can't, because Kayla is visually impaired, right? So sometimes she can't see, so she's like, oh, I gotta look at it from a different angle. But me, as a person with a physical disability who was just like low energy that day, I was like, listen, can somebody else be me? Somebody get on stage and be me. I'll do it when you need me to do it, but like, I'm not doing all this walking, that's crazy. You know, like, no, right?
I'll do it on the day.
No, but it was fine. And one of the other performers who was sitting on the side, you know, and this is also where like having intergenerational performances can be really nice too, because I'm like, one of y'all young 20-somethings who just want to get up there and do that, right? Like you walk back and forth, right? You walk back and forth, and then when it comes time for the final thing, I will get up and do it, right? But I'm not going to do all this because for me, I'm always having to measure my energy when I'm in those processes, right? And and I try to give people warnings. People do not always listen to the warnings, right? Because they're not accustomed to them. But I'm like, you have 15 minutes until I become ungovernable, right? So, so you know, and yeah, there was friction sometimes because it's like, well, but we're on crib time, and I'm like, I'm telling you that in 15 minutes, I will cease to do anything, right? I'm just gonna start cussing people out because like my blood sugar's too low or whatever it is, right? So, but my dream coming off of this, you know, one of my dreams is to like imagine a theater where the seats are not like this, right? Like where people can be where they need to be. We just listened to / read this article, which I'm always talking about because I love post-apocalyptic theater on native land. It's on HowlRound, right? It's by Vera Starbird, who is now the writer laureate of Alaska. Hey, okay, an indigenous writer, and she really talks about like, why are we so invested in keeping American theater as it is alive, right? And like thinking about like, what would it be like to actually be comfortable when you go see a show? Not to just be wedged in, and for the chairs to be, or whatever, not chairs, right? The space to be set up for people to be able to have comfort, right?
I've been uncomfortable since I sat.
Exactly. right? Because then how can you be fully immersed and engaged? You know, you're looking at the watch like, how long until my nerves stop getting pinched? How long until I can use the bathroom? How long until I can have a snack, right? Because we have the snack police out there, snatching candies from elders. You know, how dare you can't have a snack, you know? So what is it? And even that in itself, imagining a space where the audience could come in and be comfortable and really be in the space is radical. Completely radical.
I always think about this kind of like perceived hierarchy and this linear, and like, what if we start just thinking a little more in circles and spheres? You know, when you walk into an audition room, why is there this barrier of the table that, you know, people are, like,
perform.
Like, what if this actually, but these are just like very simple adjustments.
Yes.
And maybe I'm in my own field thinking this way, but this very subtle changes that are just going to start to change the process.
Right. Yeah.
I just think the product is going to be different, inevitably.
Inevitably, right? I did a show with Performance Space New York, or at Performance Space New York, I Want to Be With You Everywhere, and this was it pre-pandemic or like early pandemic? I think it was pre-pandemic. Anyway, they have these like sleep pods that they got because apparently they were next to a pop-up mattress store and they were going to throw out, they're like essentially giant bean bags. And so for the first time we did it, they took the front row, they had these bean bags so people could like lay or recline or whatever. And I did a theater festival, which I will not name because I'm about to say something a little shady.
Thank you for the warning.
It was a quick theater festival, and we were, 24, 48, 72 hours, however many, which I discovered. I'm like, I'm too old for this. Y'all should have invited me like 5 years ago, because I like to sleep. Why am I up at 3 in the morning writing? Like, no. But I was laying on the floor at one point when we were doing tech, and somebody was like, Azure, can you get up? Like, I think they thought that I was being disruptive in some way, shape, or form, but I was like, am I on the stage? No, I'm not. Like, I was in front of the stage. And so I didn't feel like arguing with people or being difficult in that moment. But, I was mumbling about, I'm sorry, was me laying on the floor actually disturbing anything? Like, was this making it so that the actors couldn't do their job? Like, is anybody, so the question that I ask myself constantly, as a teacher, a person, whatever, is, do I need to control that other person in order to do what I need to do? Or can I adjust or just mind my business, right?
Yeah.
Why can't people lay down when they're in the theater? Why not?
This is Ashley again. Oh my gosh, I could continue talking to all of you for hours and hours, but we are reaching time. We got 15 more minutes. So, and also, if you have to go to the bathroom, take a break, please do that. Hopefully that has been understood. But pulling out a couple of things that each of you have said about the labor and capacity and energy and just the heaviness, the weight that comes with doing this work while also being an artist and the multitudes and the many things being true at the same time. It's hard. It can be difficult, and it can be really challenging. And I know that there are new artists coming in. So for disabled artists who are just beginning their careers or trying to find their voice in an often inaccessible and ableist field, what advice would you offer? What has helped you stay resilient in your own process, in your own practice?
I feel like, this is Marilee. It's funny, I almost always in virtual spaces say it's Marilee speaking, and I'm the one who's not doing it here as the blind, low vision person who benefits from, one of the people that
that's
benefits.
privilege for you. You're like, ha
Yeah, that's right.
It can be. I mean, I also identify as a trickster. This is Azure. I also kind of love, I realize that it's an access thing, but I also love that you can't look and see who's speaking, right?
Yeah.
So we could all be, that's my artist brain as well. I'm like,
Yeah, but
we could all be one voice.
I got your energy though, I got it. It's clear. Oh, shit. What was the question?
The
feels, yes.
People, yes.
You know, it has taken me a long time to really source my worth. I mean, I can go out and say, well, you can do this, that, and the other, but that's the deep work, I think, that I have had to do for myself to be able to engage in an industry and a world that has very particular belief systems about my worth. So, so finding ways in which you can really come into yourself and go, where's my worth today? And even if it's just in like a toe, you know, that toe or that finger can begin to grow and grow and grow. And some days I can really feel my value. And I've moved from that place of having to prove it to just knowing it. And that is, I mean, that's for anybody. But I just want to acknowledge that especially when folks are really first coming in, there's a lot of proving. And to acknowledge what are you proving and where does that actually, if you're proving your worth, where does the worth already live in here? It wasn't an overnight process for me. I wish it was. It's taken me decades, but now I feel like I can walk into a space and I know my value. In terms of the actual like practicals, figure out what you need, because most people aren't going to know, and begin to like literally write down what you need. And also when your needs aren't being met, one of the things that I blamed myself. I used to blame myself for getting so anxious, for having my nervous system so dysregulated. I thought I was doing something wrong when my needs weren't getting met, why am I reacting this way? Why do I feel anger? Why do I feel trauma? Why do I want to do something really violent right now? To acknowledge that when your needs aren't being met, it does affect your nervous system. So to give yourself space to attend to yourself as you're moving through spaces that may not always welcome you. And in terms of the practicals, each time you go into a space, have it clarify what you need, what you want, and then begin to step into it more and more and more so that you can begin to easily ask for it, because not everybody's going to know. And hopefully we'll start building these spaces where it's already built in, and you literally are just like, here's my card, this is what I need, and everybody's like, got it, got it, got it. But until that happens, take care of your nervous system. Know that when you're agitated and it gets activated, you're not doing anything wrong. And figure out what you need and begin to practice asking for it.
That's great.
Those are just like little practicals.
Thank you.
And every time I heard no, that was just a big old yes to my inner artist. Every time I heard no, I was like, oh yes, 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 yes. And that yes just kept getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And I almost now, when people say no because of my certain identities I hold, I'm like, oh, you're so small. And then I'm just like, thank you for the no. Now I can go in the direction of yes. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is,
Go.
do you,
Go for it.
okay, I was going to say, like, sort of leaping off of that, there's a few practices that I have that this tip taps into. I feel like your feelings are your compass, right? Your feelings are your compass. So yes, no, oh, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. I think when you're young, sometimes it can get very jumbled, right? Like some things about it feel good, some things about it feel bad, you know. So finding the spaces where it feels unequivocally, unquestionably like a yes are incredibly important, right? Like building up the practice of getting what you want. This is also why people self-sabotage, because you're not in practice of getting what you want, and then all of a sudden you get everything you want, and you're like, well, I'm gonna ruin it. No, consciously, of course, right? So like finding those spaces, and those are usually affinity spaces for me, right? Like, where are my black people at? Where are my black queer people at? Where are my black queer trans people at? Where are my black disabled queer trans and, you know, like, et cetera, like people, which, you know, sounds like a piling on, but it's really not, because there's a lot of like, you know, like autism and gender non-conforming, you know, like trans, like they hold hands, right? Like they go together, we go together. But I also was telling Vinnie about this earlier. Like I had this vision, which yes, I realize this could be considered problematic, you know, tell your mammy about it. About like disability community as like this giant like monster, right? Like just, yeah, in the best kind of way, in the reclaimed monster kind of way, where we're just like, we're all using what we got, right? So somebody's got the legs, and you know, somebody's got the eyes, and somebody's got the arms, and we're just like, smash, 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 right? Like, yeah, so like, I love that, right? And I feel like that's coalition building, like that's our way forward, is like, we're all just like, yeah, like my low vision homies, like we're sighted guiding them through, right? Like, I got you, we're walking through the backstage area, we're making it to the stage, I'm describing it, right? Like, I'm using the little bit of like ASL that I have, like we are coming through, boom, 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 right?
It's a conscious collaboration. And there's something in this process, this goes back to your question about understanding yourself and your process in your disability that is so parallel to the creative process. But when you live your life as a disabled person, of course there are always things of like, oh, I kind of wish I could do that, or maybe this were a little different, but there also is a growth process of like, well, it can't be. So there's a realistic way of showing up and saying, okay, let's take out everything that we don't have. Let's start working from this positive place and this creation space of what we do have. And that's where I would go back. First of all, Marilee, I wish I had you as a mentor a while, but like that's what I would say to a young artist, is find the people who have been here on these routes, on these journeys. These are your disabled theater ancestors. And those, hands down.
You don't have to be.
Okay.
Experience.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. Those, hands down, are the people who saved my life. It's the people who said, no, there's not space for you, but we will make a space. It's the voice teacher who said, never be more than who you are or less than who you are. And that's the one instruction in my life I understood at all. So using your pursuit or whatever this kind of thing on the side is of like being here or being in this industry, but using it for the internal reflection process. What is my instrument? How does my instrument work? And there is something inseparable about creative processes and collaboration and that discovery about your disability. And it opens space to some hopefully potential alignment and growth. And some of that is life, you know? So, but I would say to young people, you may actually be the only one who knows about you. And so my mistake was being an actor as well, needing to be understood, and this kind of disconnect from your entire being to go out into the world and get these things from spaces and places that actually can't give them to you. And so what is the part on the inside of discovering one's own needs and connecting with that and really using the somatic gift that this is and the like freaking privilege that it is to have had found a way to engage with your humanity through the arts. I mean, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I heard Marilee say, I'm not that old. And I just want to say, you know, I'm sure there were people out there when I said, oh, I just turned 40. They're like, that's not that old. You're still, okay, all right, yes.
Yeah.
And also, as a trans person, I am now a trans elder, right? Like the whole flattering, like the being enamored with youth, like we need to get over it, right? And like we're flattering, like, what is middle age? Well, it depends on what end of age looks like, right? And we have to get really real about that. And so it's like, okay, I mean, it's not, as my friend Dominic says, it is what it is, right? Like it's not, or as I often say, it's not a value statement. I'm not adding, like that's not a good thing or a bad thing, it is what it is, right? And so in this intergenerational piece, like these young people came in and I'm like, oh, I'm an elder now. I don't know when that happened, but I'm not the youngest kid on the block, right? And like we've got these 21, 22, won't reveal how old they are because, and that shows how young you are as well. People, and I'm like, oh, I do have something to offer because I've been out here scrapping since I was like 24 in the city, right? And so just like being willing, I would say for folks who are more in my age category, giving a little more grace, right? For the wildness and the youth and the not quite sureness, and also helping pump them up, right? Like I'm just like, you do know, like speak up. And also if you don't feel like speaking up, I will do it. Because as I tell my students, I'll fight anybody.
Oh my gosh. This conversation, this discussion was everything that I had hoped for and more. This is a question that I did not prepare you all for, so I apologize. However, how can people connect with you? What's the best way to do that? If they want to collaborate or get to know you and your work, how should people reach out?
Well, my handles are at, what are they? The Thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you can tell I'm Gen X. An Artist Warrior on IG. You can just go to my Instagram page, Marilee Talkington, and connect with me there.
This is Azure. My name is Azure Osborne-LeeMarilee. I'm the only one. First of my name. Very Googleable. So just look on the internets.
Yeah, this is Vinnie. You can go to my website, VinnieStars.com. I'd love to tell my story and examine and explore and create. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
Marilee.
thank you, Ashley,
Yes.
for preparing
Thank you.
such incredible questions
Thank
and
you.
being such an amazing moderator.
Thank you, Marilee, Azure, Vinnie. Thank you all so much. And to our audience here for, the audience participation, loved it. And to those who are watching on the live stream, I think that's all she wrote, folks. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.